Well, here we are enjoying the lovely weather of the Oval Festival of Transport. And looks like the army here are enjoying themselves too. Well, it's not only the regular army here. Every year, the military vehicle section here consists of old military vehicles. That's military vehicles mainly of World War II, many post-war vehicles and some pre-war vehicles as well. A fine collection got together by Peter Hibbard, the section organiser, very much the enthusiast himself, and has collected many vehicles during his time. This particular vehicle is the big Diamond T969, the Wrecker. These were not only supplied to the American Army, but many were supplied to the British for maintenance in the field of heavy equipment. A very similar vehicle here is the Ward of France. Also an American-built vehicle, this one with a Continental engine, whereas the Diamond T had the Hercules engine, fitted with a Holmes crane. A lot of these now have come into use in civilian life for bus recovery, etc. They were pretty tough vehicles, and of course many of them have been fitted with diesel engines now for better economy. You can see how well these owners get the vehicles up together and do the paintwork on them to depict the regiments, etc. that they were in and get all the correct livery. Now, our wrecker vehicle and our recovery vehicle was, of course, the Scammell Explorer that we see so many of about since their service life. These vehicles were fitted with a petrol engine originally. Patriotic lads, they love to fly the flag here in this section. It's a very friendly section, the military vehicle section, and wherever you go there, you get a very happy greeting, and of course the children enjoy it too. This is actually Peter Hibbard's exhibit, and his family, two of them and two friends, are enjoying the ride around on it. That's the Daimler Ferret. That's a vehicle that's derived from the old World War II Daimler Dingo that had the Daimler engine, but this has got the Rolls-Royce B-Series engine in it. Pre-select gearbox. Lovely, tough little vehicles, these Ferrets. There's Peter's lad. He's enjoying doing a bit of maintenance and just checking that everything's right for Dad. Perhaps he'll take the section on himself one day. Looks quite keen, doesn't he? Proudly showing the flag is another British armoured vehicle of post-war era. This one with a Rolls-Royce B-Series engine, the 6-cylinder engine. This is the Humber Pig. These were used in Northern Ireland, hence the heavy armour. They were patrol vehicles. One of the Hounslow collection from just the other side of Sherborne. Terry Hounslow, very keen collector, and has something like 7 or 8 military vehicles in his homestead. And here we have a very famous vehicle from post-war years, used by not only the civil defence, the fire service, but definitely thousands went in the army, the Bedford RL, a 4-wheel drive Bedford. And here is something very appropriate in this area today, the 43rd Wessex Div, that's the Wessex Wyvern there. It's always interesting to see how these lads collect together the correct div signs and the arms of service number that we see here, just to bring back a bit of authenticity to these vehicles. There's the Austin K9, another post-war vehicle. This was the radio van. You see by the cab it was basically the Austin Lodestar, but they're hiked up a bit and given 4-wheel drive. And that big powerful 6-cylinder engine saw them very well, not only on roads but certainly cross country. But for cross country speed, you can't beat the old wartime white Scout car built by White America with a Hercules petrol engine, 4-speed gearbox. These were very fast. What we would call a long-legged Scout car. They would go some. I was a wireless operator on one of those on one occasion. And here's the proper little Chevy. This is the Canadian military pattern, and a very unusual one because instead of just a normal 1500 weight body, it's got this passenger carrying body on it. Beautiful vehicles were the Canadian vehicles that were built mainly to British specification and used by the Canadian and the British armies. That's obviously a British specification here with a Z on the side, the Z number portraying that class of vehicle. America's counterpart was the Dodge weapons carrier that we see here. Many Dodges were built during World War II, and as same again, a lot of these went to our British forces, especially in the Far East, because it was a lot easier bringing them across the Pacific than taking them down through the Atlantic and down to the Mediterranean during hostilities. Very reliable vehicle, the old side pole Dodge there. There was also a six-wheeled version. We don't see many in preservation now. There are still a few. Here's something that's coming onto the circuit in great numbers now. It's the long wheelbase Land Rover. Some of these with V8 engines. I think it's the 110. Land Rovers always gave their name to correspond with the wheelbase, 110-inch wheelbase. Good, useful vehicle, not only for military vehicle collectors, but what a nice vehicle to have on a farm. Yes, Land Rovers certainly have made some donation to for military use, haven't they?
This time in sand colouring. This one is, we're going to the history here from this one. I think his father was in...
Well, there's a good old timer, the Leyland Hippo. They gave the Hippo name to their six-wheelers. You see the div sign on the front, TT, that was the old Tyne and Tees division. This has got the Leyland diesel engine, the big six-cylinder plodding engine there, belonging, of course, to one of our area groups. And even the bicycles. Beryl Blake from up the other side of Guildford, she brings along her collapsible bicycle. You can actually take that apart, and there's a typical little 1500 weight of World War II, the MW Bedford. Small, yes, but still had that same 28 horsepower Bedford engine that old Bedfords had during that era. Even one of our tanks was built with two of those engines stitched together. Famous for its tough going and reliability. Nice little display there. I'm always amazed by the amount of work that goes into the preservation of these wonderful old vehicles.
Yeah, well this actual Tilly I got from a farm near Reading. It had been laying under the hedge for a long time, and it had very badly deteriorated. The sides had fallen off, the bodywork was completely gone, there was no engine and gearbox in it. It really shouldn't have been done, but being as they're so rare, it was worth having a go at. They're quite rare vehicles, so I wanted one for a long time, and I thought, well, as bad as it is, it's worth having a go at. So I brought it home, picked up all the loose bits around the ground around it, negotiated with the seller to get an engine and gearbox for it, and took it home and did the restoration on it. It took about 2 years. In the event, the gearbox and engine which I had from the that came with it weren't suitable, so I had to get another engine, and one of the nice coincidences was that I bought a complete standard car. It was advertised as good mechanically, but needed restoration. I bought the complete car, took the engine and gearbox from that, and as luck would have it, when I washed the engine and gearbox off, there was military paint underneath, so the engine had been in one of these before. So it was more at home in this vehicle than it was in the car. The car was eventually sold on, so that's being restored again. So two vehicles have come well out of it, which is nice. The military history of this one I can't trace. I tried, but the data plate was missing, so there was no chance of tracing the military history. So I've painted it myself in the livery of my dad's old unit, which is 139 Plant Company Royal Engineers, when they were in service in Austria in 1947. So that explains the gloss paint. It's not wrong. A lot of people think the gloss paint is wrong, but it is an appropriate livery for the time I've chosen to restore the vehicle for.
Well, that was one of our keenest members, Mike Winter. And when Mike does a restoration, and he's done many, he really goes into it. Another old favourite of mine, the Bedford QL. That was the forerunner of the RL we saw earlier. Very well liked vehicle. This is the command vehicle version, where officers would conduct their operations, complete of course with camouflage netting. Good eye for detail, these military vehicle collectors. And now one of the 3-tonners, it's not so common as the Bedford. This is the Austin K3. Belonged to another fellow who's been coming to this show for many, many years, and always a cheerful chap to have around, John Robbins from the other side of Pewsey. He's made a lovely job of this old Austin. She sounds good and looks good. The rope on the front of the camouflage net, as I said before, they do a grand job. And it's great for the old soldiers who come along to these shows and look around, and it takes them back to the time when they were moved from one place to the other in the back of these old lorries. Now, some of the younger lads can possibly remember being taken round in the back of these. This is a troop carrier, an amphibious troop carrier, built by Alvis, as you could see the nameplate earlier, a name, well, familiar with famous cars, but the old stalwart. And they're a lineup of Jeeps, and don't matter how many Jeeps you see, you'll never see two the same. A grand little vehicle produced by the Americans in 1942, and they built, getting on for $500,000. Well, there's no doubt about it. They started a trend, didn't they? Because all the 4x4s on the road today were a follow-on from the useful service put in by the Jeep in World War II. Even the Land Rover copied the length of wheelbase and upgraded some of the components in their own way in 1948 to make the first Land Rover. But there's still a lot of people who love the old Jeep, the old original, built by Ford and Willys. I remember these humming through our village during the war with the Yanks aboard, and then later on with the British. This one here has the American markings on. The ones with the British markings would be a little bit different. They'd have side lights on them. One of our provisions that we asked for. There's that old stalwart again. 6-wheel drive. What a tough machine that is. I've had the good fortune of having a drive in one of these for a birthday present on a cross-country section, and one of the most enjoyable drives I've ever had, I think. Rough, but thrilling. And this takes me back to my army driving test, the old Morris Quad. There were thousands of these built for pulling the famous 25-pounder gun. This particular one belongs to the Royal Artillery Wing down at Bovington, and it comes to many of our shows. It's been preserved and painted up into the colours, the desert colouring of the 7th Armoured Div, the old Desert Rats. Remember those only too well in the North Africa campaigns, and that's the Arms of Service number, red and blue, showing that she's Royal Artillery, and numbers 42, 43 and 44 would depict the 3 regiments that were usually within a division. There she is, 4-cylinder, side valve engine, 5-speed gearbox, 4-wheel drive, and a massive winch. A proper little gun tractor built to do a job that it did so well. That's the limber for carrying the ammunition, 30-odd rounds of 25-pounder ammunition. And there is the gun trail. And that big ring you see underneath, you drop that and then you pull the gun back up on it, and then you've got something to slew the gun on. That's the Mark I 25-pounder. Had it been a later model, there would have been a big attachment to the end of the barrel there called the flash eliminator. Very famous gun, very accurate and very reliable. Drawing the enthusiasm of young and old alike, this show. I think he'll have to ask his granddad all about this. Quite a lot do. Wherever you wander among a military vehicle section, you'll always find the owners and the drivers there. And you can have a chat to them, which makes things a lot easier. And they're very enthusiastic people. Now we've got a couple of rare motorcycles here now, you see. This is the American one, possibly the Harley Davidson. They brought over Harleys and Indians, which were the V-twin type of bike. Entirely different to our motorcycles. You just sat back on a nice comfortable ride on those. Not so maneuverable across country as our bikes were. And of course, they were hand changed, some of them with a foot clutch. There she is, the typical Yankee side valve V-twin there. And pannier bags on the back that the collector loves to find, reminiscent of the old Pony Express. Well, now, our second bike here is certainly very rare, and I don't even remember seeing one of these before. That's the rather limited production Indian that came over here in very small numbers. They were only produced from about 1941 to 42. And whoever the lucky chap is to have found this has really got a rare find. This certainly puts a value on a motorbike, and it's really made my day to find one of these rare old Indians. Over now to some post-war American vehicles. These are built by Kaiser Jeep, or Rio. Very similar to the GMCs of World War II, but much bigger and a much tougher job. And 5-speed gearbox, huge engine in there. It's got a turbo. And when you get these on full throttle, don't they whistle? Yes, the Yanks really produce a good one when they produce that particular vehicle. Very collectible now. Another view of our long wheelbase Land Rover. Ideal for the military vehicle collector because he has room to put a bed up in the back. And talk about collections, our friend Mr. Cooper here, he's got this Series 1 Land Rover that he has done up in the same colours as the Land Rover he drove when he was in the army. And this is a real case of nostalgia. And he's done his collection of badges and militaria. Lots of people come round and chat to him about this particular collection, even to the World War II gas mask there. Those things that we loved to know we had, but hated the thoughts of wearing. The old original Series 1 Land Rover, still the best looking. And now, here's another little 4x4 that we didn't really ought to have. It belongs to Argentina, really, but the museum at Yeovilton have let us borrow it because after the Argentina war, it was brought back as one of the trophies of war. Made by Mercedes, and a very well spoken about vehicle. The chap who brings it here and drives about it, he really praises it up. So we've got it, and if they want it back, well, they'll have to come and get it one day. Well, the weather was certainly kind to us this year, and that certainly makes things a lot easier when it comes to ring parades and chatting to people who restore these vehicles.
Right, well, this vehicle is a 1943 Willys MB Jeep. It's one of approximately 540,000 built during the war for the American Army, and a lot of them were exported to Russia and British forces. I came by it 18 years ago at the bottom of a garage yard, literally with a tree growing up through it. And after about 18 months restoration from the ground up, it appears as it is today. Right, well, it's powered by a 2.2 litre side valve 4 engine, which is gasoline. Produces 60 bhp, which isn't a lot by today's standards, but it's enough to power this vehicle. Common uses were command transport vehicles. They had specialist roles as well as stretcher carriers for medics. Quite often they had trailers where they carried ammunition and materials to the front. This particular vehicle with the machine gun on it was as used by Patton's Third Army in its dash across France. And the idea of mounting a heavy machine gun was purely to send an armoured infantry battalion in front of tanks. Therefore they shot up the anti-tank gunners before the tanks themselves came in. Also, as an addition to restoring military vehicles, I've got an extensive militaria collection as well, and what I've tried to do is give an accurate representation of the weapons and equipment which an American soldier during 1944 would have used and carried with him.
Back for another view of a couple of push bikes, and don't you remember, you lads, when you were in the services having to do battery runner and being provided one of these great heavy bikes? Well, here to me was one of the stars of the show. This is the Daimler armoured car. Many times at shows we see the little Daimler Dingo built pre-war, but not very often the big armoured car like that was. That's got a Daimler engine, pre-select gearbox, 5 speeds that could go forward or back, fluid flywheel drive. Britain set the trend for this type of armoured car just before World War II, and a great job they did during the Desert Campaign. But most of them were cut up, of course, for scrap after the war, and Preston Isaacs at Devon was lucky enough to preserve one and bring it along here to the Festival of Transport.
I can see the tractor lads getting lined up in the area over there. So we're going to have a parade.
Everything works, even the turret, but I can assure you the gun has now been deactivated. Looks like the sunshine really brought the crowds in. There's a nice little setup up in the military section. No regimental lining up, but they're all set up in their own little groups. And there's another little 1500 weight. Remember we saw the little MW Bedford. That's the Ford WOT 2. W-O-T being Ford's letters for the military vehicles. That's the WOT 2. Ford V8 engine, certainly the fastest of the 1500 weights produced during that era. And there's a little Austin 10. A young lady owns that one and brings it along to the show. Many of these were produced with a utility back, the Austin Tilly. It's very rare to see the actual saloon version. And that black and drab camouflage, because of its curvaceous character, was known as the Mickey Mouse camouflage. Identical to the Austin 10 car of 38, 45 era. Another little group there with the Chevy and the QL. Possibly a problem, but nothing that can't be surmounted with all the knowledge that lies around that section. Believe me, they can sort anything out. And they help each other as much as they possibly can. A great group is the military section group. Well, there's a lineup of the Jimmies. The GMCs produced by the American Army and sent over here in their thousands. The first one with the original tin cab, identical to the Civic cab. And here, a relation to GMCs, of course, Bedfords of England, being a pup from General Motors. That's the Bedford 3-tonner. I suppose every soldier during World War II, sometime or another, had to ride up in the back or the front of that old-type Bedford. And a lot came into use for civilian use after the war, even with that old square nose. The square nose that was designed to house a big air cleaner that was necessary in the North Africa campaign. Stars and Stripes flying now on the big reel. I got quite attached to these vehicles. I love the sound when you put your foot down, that lovely whistle of the turbo coming in there. Similar vehicle here, but this time with the fifth wheel coupling for articulated work. And of course the soft top cab has been familiar on American vehicles since the early 40s. And trundling round as faithful as ever, the Leyland Hippo. These were the Army 10-tonners. They carried ammunition, repair equipment, troops, anything. And of course with British 100% reliability. Great vehicles, the old Leylands. And that particular cab was used on the early post-war Leylands until they brought out their later design. It was known as the interim cab. Back again to our little Series 1. And look on the front near side mudguard there, you can see Pegasus, the flying horse. That was the badge of the airborne. Very unusual engine in the Land Rover, overhead inlet side exhaust, but later on they produced this. I think this is the Series 3 long wheelbase, another of the Hounslow collection, driven by young Martin, the son. Also carrying the airborne Flash. Terry Hounslow being, of course, once a member of the airborne forces.
This is a 1942 Willys MB Jeep. I purchased it about, 9 years ago. It wasn't in too bad a condition, so I didn't have to do a lot of work. But eventually I had the engine, the gearbox go wrong on me, so I had to strip it down. And when I stripped it down, I decided to paint it in desert colours, because most people seem to go for either Marine Corps or airborne. So I thought, well, what should I do with it? So I thought, well, my dad was in the Polish Army during the war, and I asked him what vehicles he had, and he explained the details of what the Willys Jeeps they had in Egypt in 1942, and hence all the colours and markings of this particular Jeep. The markings are of Polish artillery regiment, the 3502 regiment. They were attached to the 2nd Corps of the British Army and went from Egypt to Italy and on through there, and hence the desert colours and all the bits and pieces. Since I've done it up, it's pretty good, it goes well. I've now got a trailer with it and adding bits and pieces to it as we're still going on.
And so we say farewell to the Yeovil Festival Transport. Where next?
Well, this is something different. We found ourselves in the heart of a World War II American setup here now. We've got a lot of interesting vehicles here, used in World War II by the Yanks when they came over here. The first one here, the GMC. Let's have a look around 2 or 3 vehicles of great interest. Well, what made a name more famous than Willys and Ford when they produced the Jeep? Jeep, a name that goes around with 4x4 vehicles now, but these vehicles were of course the originators of the modern 4x4. These were produced around about 1942. They got a little 2.2 litre engine, sidewall, 3-speed gearbox and 4-wheel drive, a simple little vehicle, but they were not rugged. They took a lot of hammering, and well, they were issued to so many different armies during World War II. Everybody, well, except the enemy, that was. Another vehicle produced in America for their forces, and we used a lot of them too, was the Dodge. This Dodge has got the well-tried and well-known Dodge 6-cylinder side-valve engine. These have got a 4-speed gearbox with 2-speed axle, and some of them had a reduction gear on. As I say, 4-wheel drive, purpose-built for ambulance work in active conditions, and good sound stuff. And the French Army and the Norwegian Army went on using these until not many years ago. Hence a lot of their old stuff has been coming across to this country to be renovated and brought back to shows such as this. I suppose one of the famous trucks of World War II the bigger trucks was the 2.5-ton Big Jimmy. The GMC, General Motors, of course, they were the parent company of Vauxhalls and Bedfords. And if you look at the engine in there, you will see the similarity between that engine and the British Bedford engine. It's a 6-cylinder overhead valve engine. There's 6-wheel drive. This is the short wheelbase version. They had a 5-speed gearbox in there with a 2-speed axle. This one was built with the original civvy cab, what they called the tin cab. Some of them were built with tipper bodies. Of course, this has got the gun ring and all on it. And a fascinating vehicle. And I remember during the war when these came through the village in their hundreds in the convoys. Very popular vehicle, the Jimmy. Here's now, we have something of great interest to me. The half-track, built by Whites of America. There was also an almost identical one built by Internationals. You'd only find the difference by the shape of the mudguard. But Whites built these and a scout car. The half-track, of course, was used as a forward position vehicle with armoured regiments. It's got a good old 6-cylinder engine in there, well known in America, the Hercules engine, used by Studebakers and Diamond Tees and various people such as that. These had the 4-speed gearbox and the 2-speed axle, and despite the weight of it, the winch and everything on the front, they were extremely fast. And you could cruise in one of these at 50 miles an hour quite happily. Big white half-track, very popular. Well, this is a pretty setup. Yet another Jeep, but there are never two Jeeps the same. This one has been really decked out nicely with some appropriate American Army gear. 1st Infantry Div of the American, the red ones as they were known. But over there is something that I can't get my eye off, and that's the Army 22 set. A radio used by the British Army, and when I was a young wireless operator back in 1947 and 8, that's the type of thing that I was operating. How interesting to see one again. Got the orthodox military vehicle helmets here. And it's lovely just to look inside the Jeep and look at that, even a deactivated rifle. The amount of work that these collectors and renovators put into these old military vehicles really is outstanding, and how nice it is today to come along and have a memory jog with just a few of them. Right, we're going to have a chat now to some of these people involved with this collection of old military vehicles, especially the American vehicles. Fred, I've known you for a long time, and you've had military vehicles for some time. You used to have the old GMC. Yeah. Have you got the old one now?
Yeah.
And you've got the Jeep here today.
Yeah, a couple of Jeeps.
What got you interested in it in the first place?
Well, when I was in the Army in the early 50s, you know, I was in Korea, and most of our equipment then were brought over by the Americans from Japan. And so even the British had mostly American equipment. We had Persian tanks, which were World War II, but they were brought in too late for the European field.
It was an easier trip to come across that way than for us to take it out.
Taking the British stuff right around the world. And,
so you took a liking for it then?
And for the past 26, 27 years, I've been in love with
many shows many times.
Yeah.
The old Jeep still going well?
Very well, yeah. Now, still using petrol, unfortunately, but it's
that doesn't get it. Was she run on unleaded, the old Jeep? I should think they probably would, because they had, during the war, they used to run on some pretty ropey stuff.
Yeah, very. Yeah.
And what about you, my dear? Are you interested in it as well, or do you just come along in tolerance? You are interested.
I am, I like it.
Appropriate colouring on there.
I do like it. I enjoy it.
I think it's a lovely way to spend a weekend, because I've always found that, especially with the military sections, so more so than some of the other sections, they're a very friendly group.
That's what I find as well.
We found that today. You go and find a vehicle and you try to find the driver. If you come to the military section, they're there with the vehicles. Right. I think you like the atmosphere about it.
They all muck in, don't they? They all muck in together. And it is a nice interest.
Holiday every weekend?
Yeah, it is really.
That's a nice way
it is.
It's an excuse you don't have to take you on holiday, really.
Yeah, I know.
It's far cheaper than going abroad, isn't it?
So you're still living up on the Cranmore and doing a bit of farming?
Yeah, still
well done. But it's nice that you find a bit of time off and come down here and show off these old vehicles, because people like myself and a lot of other older people love to see them.
That's right.
Because it's part of our life, wasn't it? It's part of our history.
I mean, if it wasn't for these vehicles and others, of course, we could have been a different nation if Germany...
well, exactly. I once was asked by someone, well, why didn't the British produce more vehicles? And I said, well, you know, they only had women what were available working in the factories, and them enemy used to send us sort of drop things out the sky and
the Americans, before the war, they were really keyed up into the automotive
Oh, yeah.
In the 30s, 20s and 30s.
Yeah.
I mean, they could produce it far
Thousands
better.
a week,
Yeah,
whereas we were
thousands.
probably down to sort of 20, 30 a week in some
That's right,
factories.
yeah.
Anyway, it's nice to know that they produce enough and there's still some left.
Well,
Nice to meet you again,
right.
Fred.
See you,
Long
Jerry.
may you be coming. Cheers now. And you, my dear. Bye for now.
Thanks, Ed. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Well, here at the Bath and West Showground at the Truck Fest, where I've now been chatting to the military section, we had another very interesting vehicle, this old Fiat. It was built back around about World War I and was used by the Army. It's not now in military colours. In fact, it belongs to an insurance broker now. And if ever there was a first-class piece of restoration to bring something back to its original condition, it's this old Fiat. But just think back to World War I when this was the type of vehicle. What a problem they must have had in the mud that was encountered during those battles with those thin tyres, no front axle drive, not a lot of comfort anywhere. The cabs on these old vehicles always amused me too. Fortunately, the maximum speed was sort of in the 20s. Had it been any higher, I fancy there'd have been a lift-off due to the aerodynamics of that canopy, supposedly to keep the driver warm and safe from the storms. Yes, it really is a military vehicle, although I said now not in military colours. Great work done by these restorers. And we're going back now with a rather historic bit of filming. This was back in the 80s at the show at Staverton in Gloucester, where we once again enjoy the military vehicle parade. Majority of these owners and restorers belong to the Military Vehicle Trust, or over the eastern side of the country there's another military preservation group, the well-known IMPS. And look at this exhibit here. That's the Austin Champ. Clever bit of machinery that. Go just as fast backward as forward. A youngster enjoying his ride on the Harley Davidson. And here's the Land Rover that I used to see quite often, but not recently. That's the Pink Panther. It was the long distance desert patrols. And no mistaking the ubiquitous 3-ton Bedford. And here is the International half-track as opposed to the white we saw earlier, and the famous Duck, that amphibious GMC. Another sidecar outfit here. That was built on the Norton chassis, the old Norton 600. It had a shaft drive right through the back that you could engage or disengage as required. It wouldn't do to try and corner on the road with the back axle engaged, otherwise without a differential one would have problems. And again, our rather stalwart Wardle of France. Very majestic looking vehicle, aren't they? Built with a petrol engine. And the GMC with the tin cab. These vehicles had a lovely overhead valve 6-cylinder engine, 5-speed gearbox, as opposed to the little 4-cylinder side valve in the Jeep. Well, some people do it the comfortable way. Many of these American staff cars have now become in the preservation group, and it's lovely to be able to go to a show and drift around in comfort as opposed to being thumped around on the hard suspension of some of the 3-tonners. But what about this German exhibit here? This was the Opel Olympia. It's a 4-cylinder engine. Well, it's a motorcycle tractor designed for German use. They were very much into the track-laying vehicles, very complicated vehicles the German army built. Good engineering, but somewhat difficult to maintain in the field. Our well-turned-out American motorcyclist, followed by the Dodge. You saw the Dodge weapons carrier earlier. This is the same chassis, but the staff car. Well, what a lineup. Bedfords, Internationals, GMCs, and there's the little Kubelwagen, the early VW. You're all here, the Jeeps and the Champs. And that Pink Panther outfit's a well-equipped bit of machinery, if ever you did see it. But now, one of our monster trucks was the Leyland Martian. that massive vehicle with an 8-cylinder Rolls-Royce petrol engine. Now, if you really want to collect military vehicles, this is something to go for. About 2.5 to the gallon. What a good pocket to go with that. And too, of course, the Scammell Explorer, though I said many of these have been altered to have a diesel engine. But originally they had a 6-cylinder petrol engine by Meadows. But a massive truck, capable of going literally anywhere with that very clever suspension at the back, based on one differential and a pair of rocking beams. The old coffee pot. And here, this is something we don't see very often, the little Hillman Minx, the Hillman 10, done up into RAF markings. Fascinating section, and any of us who lived during the war is so nostalgic to see these vehicles and remember as they, well, stopped outside our local pub or went along our roads. And of course, post-war, another Humber Pig, called the Pig because of its snouty nose. Rolls-Royce engine. Much of our British stuff was fitted with the standard Rolls-Royce engine after the war. It was a 4, 6 or 8-cylinder engine with common components. And here's one of the later American tanks that followed on after the General Grant and the Sherman. Very similar in chassis layout. Now, that's a really brave man there. He's prepared to do about 1 mile to the gallon today, giving a demonstration around the ring. Yes, they collect tanks, they collect push bikes and everything in between, these military vehicle lads. And they get up a lot of interesting trips too. They will go to France and Holland and Jersey and Guernsey, to various places where they celebrate or commemorate various things that happened during the war. And the people in those countries really do welcome you, and you could just imagine the enjoyment they get of seeing the old vehicles come over again that they were so pleased to see back in the end of the 40s. So it's full marks of these preservationists for keeping our tradition going. They aren't soldiers, they aren't even playing soldiers. They are preserving some of our heritage and some of the old vehicles that really did help us in difficult days. Well, now we're in for a small demonstration. Now you look at that vehicle and think it's one of the GMCs that was on parade earlier. Identical at the front end, slightly smaller engine, but this is a Chevrolet. Of course, Chevrolet was made by GMC anyway, but the 4-wheel versions did carry the badge of the Chevrolet. They had a 4-speed gearbox. This one's fitted with its breakdown crane, and it's now giving a demonstration on the recovery of a Jeep. And so we disappear from the ring, disappear from the show. I hope you enjoyed it.